Hey there, I have a quick thought on optimism. And the reason I want to share this with you is we are in the middle of this coronavirus pandemic. I am quarantined right now. And so I thought, hey, I'm going to share some thoughts that I see that are relative to the news. And you know what I've been seeing lately? Is there's criticism toward President Trump that he is sharing too much optimism, as if it's a problem for the news to share optimism. You see, President Trump, they argue, is painting too rosy of a picture going forward, or he's leaning positively forward too fast. Now, there is a balance, and I'm going to show you this scientifically. There is a balance between optimism and the ability to be real or to analyze pitfalls. And I'm going to show you that in a second, because one of the things that I do is executive coaching, and I do a comprehensive assessment on every person that I coach around leadership or personal achievement. And I want to show you this one because I think it's relative to what you're seeing with President Trump and the media. And that is this. So when a person takes our assessment, one of the things that they get is an understanding that they have 175 traits. Every human being has 175 traits or preferences. Additionally, of those 175 traits or preferences, every human being has 12 paradoxes. Now, a paradox is where two traits seem to work against each other, but they actually work in harmony with each other. And the key is to be balanced between both those traits. And when you look at the news and you see President Trump be optimistic, that's one thing, and then you see the media being ultra realistic or pessimistic. So which one is right? Well, let me show you. When someone gets the report back, and this is an exact printout of someone that I'm coaching right now without their name on here, but look at this. One of the 12 paradoxes is called strategic acumen. And in this paradox, you have two traits or two preferences, and they seem to be separate from each other, but they actually work hand in hand with each other. And when you get out of whack with one of these traits, it can put you in a place where you actually have a liability. And I'm going to give President Trump a score on this, but this is not his score. I'm just going to give one. I haven't given him the test or anything or the assessment, but I have an opinion of what that score would be. So look at this. This person in this paradox, on one hand, you have the aggressive trait, which is optimistic. On the bottom, you have the passive trait, which is analyzes pitfalls. So these are the two traits that work hand in hand with each other. But look at this. He's not balanced. This person that I'm coaching is not balanced. They score really high when it comes to analyzing pitfalls. So by itself, that's a great thing. It's awesome that a leader can analyze pitfalls and be aware of those pitfalls. But look here, he scores about average when it comes to optimism. But because there's a big difference between this trait and this trait, it creates a hurricane up here. So let me slow down just really quick and point this out. He is really good about analyzing pitfalls, but what that does is it keeps him in a place where he's only 75% in the place where you want to be up here of realistic optimism. Ultimately, you want to be centered up at this right-hand corner, if you will. But part of the time, he is 25% of the time, this person is in the skeptical zone down here. They become really skeptical. Well, here's what happens that gets a hurricane. Hurricanes don't always show up in an individual, but in this case, it does. When all of a sudden you lean toward one trait really heavy and you work really hard to get the result that you want, but that trait is not allowing you to get that result that you're hoping for, this person under stress will flip to be ultra optimistic, and they will flip into this zone, which puts them way up here on this side. Under stress, they'll flip. They'll become like a 10 on optimism, and the analyzing pitfalls will go to a 2, 3, or a 4. Under stress, they will basically say, and that's the area of blind optimistic. They'll just throw the towel in and they'll say, okay, let's just do it. It'll work out. They'll just blindly go along with the argument. Now, no, this is how some people are. Now, I have another example of a different person that I'm coaching right now, and that is this person is the opposite. He is highly optimistic, but look at the analyzing pitfalls. It's actually really low. So do you think this person who lives primarily in the blindly optimistic quadrant is going to have problems? You bet, from time to time. So for this person, there's a number of things that we do to help them, which I don't have time to go into now, but we teach them some strategies that will move this score over to here. But because of how this lines up, they end up with a gray hurricane down at the bottom. And that hurricane is when things don't work, when they're ultimately optimistic, but it's not working anymore, they will flip and be ultra skeptical. Okay, now, if you're interested in this, I'd be happy to run a report on you, and I'll tell you what, it will give you a comprehensive report back that will let you see you as you are, and it will help you uncover some blind spots for sure. But I coach you after that how to move in certain directions to increase your performance and your ability and your skill in terms of thinking and also your behaviors. It's really powerful. And if you're interested in that executive coaching, hey, email me at info@greatnesswithin.com, info@greatnesswithin.com. All right, so let me point this out about President Trump. You know what I believe he is? I believe that he is probably really balanced between the two. I would say that President Trump is probably an 8 on analyzing pitfalls, but he is a 9 or a 10 on optimism. That makes him balanced. As long as you're a 7 or higher in both of the traits simultaneously, that makes you highly effective with that particular paradox. And so when I'm watching the news, what I'm noticing is he is seeing things as they are, striving with his professionals around him, the task force. He often will defer to them to answer something. They're the ones keeping him real, right? He's banking on the collaboration with them. But I think his knee-jerk reaction, his instinct, is to believe in possibilities. I think his instinct is to take a step forward toward optimism. And that is not a bad thing. So I suggest, and I learned this from Tony Robbins when I worked with him 20 years ago. I learned this from him. He said, high achievers see things as they are, but they see it a little better than it is. That's what I'm suggesting here, that you see things as they are, but you see it a little better than it is. What too many people do is they see things as it is, but they see it worse than it is, and they end up in these lower areas, and it's not effective for them. So if you're interested in receiving some high-level executive coaching with me, one-on-one, confidentially, hey, you can email us at info@greatnesswithin.com, and we'll reach out to you and we'll give you the information. And if everything works out, I'll begin to work with you and help you get to that next level. So I hope this was just an idea that as you go through this coronavirus, make sure you're balanced between Optimism versus analyzing pitfalls or keeping it real. I often will ask people that I'm coaching, are you married? And if they are married, I'll say, all right, does one of you tend to lean more toward the optimism and the other one lean more toward the analytical or the analyzing pitfalls, keeping it real quadrant? And inevitably they will say, yeah, one of us leans more toward one. My coaching strategy is to help you become balanced with both of those. Both those traits are equally important. And when they're working together, you become more effective. When they're out of whack, it creates problems. All right? And I got to give kudos to President Trump. Whether you agree with President Trump, you like him, you don't, whether you agree with his policies or not, here's one thing I'm really noticing as a leadership tactic, I'm really noticing right now as we're going through this coronavirus is, have you noticed that every day he is showing up with his task force, presenting information, giving as much information to the American people as possible. And if he doesn't know the answer, he defers to the experts around him. Think about this. This is a leadership principle. A great leader shares as much information as possible. If you follow me on my podcast, you know that I've interviewed great leaders in the business industry that have said this over and over, like Horst Schulze, the co-founder of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. On that podcast interview, he talked about how leadership involves sharing as much information as possible. I interviewed Ken Blanchard, yes, the author of The 1 Minute Manager, that classic book. When he was on my podcast, he talked about great leaders always share as much information as possible. I've heard Marcus Buckingham talk about sharing as much information as possible. I've talked to Howard Behar, who ran the Starbucks coffee company for many years when it started off with 28 stores and went to 15,000 stores under his helm. He said, great leaders share as much information as possible. So whether you like President Trump or not, you've got to give him kudos for coming out in front of the nation and sharing as much information as possible to keep the American public aware of where we stand today. All right? And it just seems like as I watch these press conferences, I'm confined right now to my home. I'm watching these press conferences every day. And it just seems like the questions that he gets is primarily, it looks like this. It's primarily negative versus optimism. And the media is discouraging any optimism statements by the president. They're trying to quantify everything that he is saying. When I think right now, when there's so much heightened stress and frustration, I think it's important that we have a leader that knows the realities. He's getting the numbers every day. He's getting the feedback every day. But the president is leaning toward the positive. And you want to do the same thing. While you're in your home, if you're being quarantined, hey, you've got to believe that the future is going to be bright. You've got to believe that it's going to turn out well. Not to say there aren't problems, not to say there's not obstacles, but lean toward the positive, all right? It can be measured. And if you want my help to help measure it for you, it could be powerful for you. So contact us at info@greatnesswithin and we'll reach out to you. All right, I wish you the best. I hope this was meaningful, helpful. Now, go unleash your greatness within. Hey there, thanks for taking the time out to listen to my podcast. I want you to know that I am grateful that you are a part of my community, and I hope that you're getting a lot out of my various podcast episodes. You see, it is my goal to provide you with those slide edge principles, strategies, and inspiration that can help you achieve your goals and your dreams. My one request is, if you enjoy my podcast in general, or you have listened to an episode that you really liked, could you do me a favor It would mean the world to me if you could write a simple review, or if you could simply give me a star rating. I would really appreciate it. Now go out there and unleash your greatness within.
GreatnessWithin.com